Hello everyone, DSP here, and welcome to DSP Reacts for another edition of DSP versus the Internet, episode 72 for July 7th, 2024. As always, today we will see a wide variety of clips from all over the internet. I love doing this variety show. It breaks up my content, gives us a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and never fails to impress. Man, do we see a wild variety of stuff on this show, right? Like, you never have any idea what you're going to see. So what we're going to do is start with Ultra Member clips. These are people who are the highest level of supporter of the channel. They're guaranteed to get their video watched once a week. And then keep in mind, if you become a submissions tier member of the channel, you submit 2 clips a week that go into a randomized playlist. You have a chance to be watched, but not guaranteed. The Ultra Members always come first for their level of support. So thank you to anyone who supports this channel. I really appreciate it. If you watch the show and you like it, please consider becoming a member today. All right. Without further ado, let's jump in and let's see what you guys have in store for me this week. Here we go.
3, 2, 1, go!
They jumped right into the water. Well, that's where neither cat wants to be, right? Never heard this. TierZoo. Never heard of this before. How cats broke the game. 2 million views 7 days ago. Wow. Okay.
This tier list can seem pretty set in stone sometimes, but in reality, major shifts in the meta can happen extremely quickly, especially when new resource hotspots and points of interest open up. Builds which are well adapted to capitalize on.
So wait, so they're acting like the Animal Kingdom is like a video game? Is that what the catch of the channel is, I guess? That's the premise of the channel. The Animal Kingdom is like a video game. Okay.
Flashpoints can see dramatic ascensions on the tier list. One such event occurred when humans unlocked the food storage ability. This greatly improved the humans' survivability by giving them a consistent source of XP even during harsh winters or famines. That is, if they could defend their stockpiles. These stashes were incredibly valuable and could easily support entire colonies of rats and sparrows if properly guarded. And while these Neolithic humans did have some techniques they could use to try and protect their precious grain on their own, ultimately their saving grace came in the form of a previously low-tier predator build that was barely scraping by in the North African savanna, the Wildcat. A build which, once domesticated, would go on to become one of the most oppressive, overpowered predators in the current meta. But what is it about the house cat that makes it such a dominant threat? And how was it that the Wildcat became better suited at taking advantage of pest infestations?
Damn, look how fast you take down that bird.
To really explain the success of the house cat, we need to go way back and start our story just after the Miocene balance patch. This update
the Miocene balance patch. I mean, the joke is pretty neat. That life is just a video game. The Miocene balance patch.
Mammals access to a new ability called Carnassial Teeth, a side grade of the Dentition skill tree, which allows users to gain bonus XP from carcasses and carrion sources. This may seem like a minor thing, but it completely changed up the metagame and made hyper-carnivorous builds a lot more viable, giving rise to a new archetype called the Carnivoran.
Carnivorans. The lion, the mongoose, the bear, the meerkat is a carnivoran. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that meerkats were carnivores. Skunk, cat, dog, and otter. Okay.
A group which includes many of the most popular predator builds in the current meta. Carnivorans are divided into 2 factions, Caniforms and Feliforms. Caniforms are more generalist in nature and invest a lot into the olfaction skill tree, letting them track the sense of whatever they need. Be it scavageable carrion, prey, fruit, honey, water, or teammates from a great distance. They also tend to have a lot of stamina, allowing them to run for long distances without tiring. Feliforms, on the other hand, doubled down on the Carnivoran archetype's original strategy. They spec'd into even more abilities meant to crank up the efficiency of the hyper-carnivore game plan.
Wow.
The ability Tongue Papillae allows felids to extract even more value from fresh kills. Instead of investing heavily into scent-based sensory power, Feliforms tend to focus more on their hearing and eyesight abilities. This doesn't help them scavenge, since things like carcasses and berries don't make sound, but it does make them incredibly good at detecting hidden prey. Also, in keeping with the Carnivoran's first major advancement, Feliforms also focus a lot more heavily on specialized dentition, optimizing their bite attacks to deal massive puncture damage, and more effectively hold onto prey so the user can deal bonus damage with their claws.
I know all about
Throw in a few
I know all about Jasper's teeth dealing bonus damage. you guys have seen some of the scratches I've shown you over the years on my arms. I have a giant scar right here from him. I got a fresh scratch that happened a week and a half ago, and I don't even know when it happened on this arm. I don't know if he bit me. I don't know if he scratched me with his back feet. I don't even know where it came from. I just looked one day. I had a big gash on my arm. Like, there you go.
More ambush-focused abilities like retractable claws and camouflage fur patterns, and you've arrived at the modern Felid, easily one of the most successful stealth assassin
messing
builds
with
the
a
game has
crocodile.
ever seen.
Or is it
In
an
fact,
alligator? I don't
during
know.
the Ice Age expansion, Felids were such a dominant threat that many other predator builds had trouble competing with them at all. In the current meta, cats remain incredibly dominant in virtually every major terrestrial server. Basically every cat,
Terrestrial
including the ones I like
server.
to throw shade at, is a threat. Not just to those of similar weight class, but even to builds that vastly outweigh them. Although their power stat tends to be fairly modest among carnivorans, through efficient use of critical hits, a skilled Felid player can take down just about anything.
Wow.
While the majority of the Felid player base was off rampaging through the upper weight classes,
Wow.
an offshoot of the faction opted to forego larger size and instead chose to spec into a few new abilities, meant to capitalize on exploiting the weaknesses commonly found in the lower weight classes. So let's finally start unpacking what makes the house cat so overpowered. We'll begin with a quick look.
Oh, is that really? I didn't even realize that this was going to be about house cats. The name of the video is How Cats Broke the Game. I thought it was just generally going to cover cats. I didn't know it was going to cover house cats specifically. Okay, let's find out about house cats. Here we go.
At the cat's stats. We've got a build with upper mid-level intelligence, low defensive stats, decent damage, above average stealth, high mobility, and excellent perception. Right off the bat, something that might jump out at you is, well, the fact that nothing jumps out at you. Cats are supposedly some of the most broken predators of all time, and yet none of their stats seems all that busted on their own. Top-tier builds tend to have at least one stat that is so high it completely invalidates the strategies of other players.
Ouch.
But no, cats aren't able to use tools, they don't have a bone-crushing or venomous bite, they can't change colors, they can't tank attacks for days, they can't echolocate, and so on. So no obvious answer here. Next, let's check out their unique abilities.
I guess it's just really good reflexes and incredible athleticism, right? And just basic predator stuff like some good claws, teeth. It's not, he's right. There's nothing that makes a cat in general crazy powerful, but it just has such a great athletic build. A cat can drop from a great distance and land perfectly fine and not be hurt. It's like, oh no. Weird. But Jasper, okay. My cat Jasper gets me so nervous, and here's why. We have a big staircase that goes to the second floor. There's a banister at the top of the staircase. He loves to jump on that banister and lay on it and look at you. And I'm like, Jasper, please, you're going to give me a heart attack. That's like, if you slide off the banister, you fall down the entire flight of stairs onto a hardwood floor, you could die. He has absolutely no fear of this whatsoever. He goes on that every day. He just doesn't, he has no fear of heights. And he's never fallen. He never slips. He scares me. You know, I have a fear of heights. For him, he's like, that's nothing. For a cat, it's no big deal. They just don't care. He's like, whatever. I don't care. I'm a cat. I'm not gonna fall off this thing. You know?
Talked about a few already, including the abilities that buff the XP rates from meat sources. These should not be understated, as without them, you can pretty much entirely write off the viability of this build. Cats, and all other mammals, have the warm-blooded trait. This grants them greatly improved stamina regen rates, greater resistance to cold damage, and a bunch of other useful perks, but at the cost of much greater upkeep requirements, meaning they need to secure kills much more frequently than similarly sized cold-blooded builds. Without these abilities granting the cat bonus XP from meat, it would be very difficult for them to keep up with their energy needs.
So cats burn a lot of energy, but need a lot of intake to maintain that energy level. Obviously, the domestic house cat that's indoors doesn't have that issue. Jasper, we give him one bowl of his dry food a day. We give him a treat in the morning. That's a wet variety of food or maybe one of the liquid treats. And that's it. That's all he needs. And he's good. He zips around the house, you know. So, you know, I get it. But if you're outside and you're constantly running for survival, you're chasing prey, I can see you burning through energy a lot and you need a lot more food. Makes sense.
With how efficient cats are at hunting.
Damn.
Cats can also move extremely quietly due to their soft toe pads and retractable
Yeah,
claws,
they're
enabling
silent.
them to easily get within striking range of prey through smart use of cover and line of sight. But okay, all types
You
of
kicked
cat,
them,
large
said,
and small, have those abilities. How about something more unique to house cats? For that, let's look at their primary perception-based ability, slitted pupils. This ability grants house cats extremely precise depth perception, greater than all other felids. This allows them to perfectly judge the optimal pouncing distance, massively increasing their odds of landing an immediate critical hit and incapacitating their target before it has a chance to respond.
All right, this channel is great. It's ingenious. It takes real life and turns it into a video game with all these memes, right? But it's perfect the way it works. I love it. This is fun. This is a good channel. I never heard of it. TierZoo. Maybe you guys want to check it out. I'm sure he probably does videos like this on like every animal type, right? This is pretty neat. I want to keep going. I really like it. I want to keep going. I actually am really enjoying this video.
So even though the house cat's base damage isn't broken in and of itself, when a house cat goes on the offensive, it can certainly look that way. This strategy is what has led to the complete collapse of several different player bases in the amphibian, reptile, bird, and mammal factions, as it truly is that oppressive. Now, while we were first looking at the cat's base stats, one thing you might have assumed right away was that the cat's lower defensive stats are its main weakness, and that cats function as a sort of glass cannon, with very little counterplay options when attacked. You might also assume that given the cat's high mobility,
what is going on?
Their defensive strategy is simply to run away when they feel threatened. And while their top speed is often enough to escape danger when needed, instead, cats employ their mobility stat defensively in a different way. This is where one of the most shockingly effective aspects of the house cat manifests. House cats use their incredible agility to stand their ground.
Look at that. Woo, woo, woo.
Agility and quick reflexes are usually used to dodge attacks, but cats instead actually use the reflexes to deflect them. Because their incredible depth perception grants them such high accuracy on their attacks, they can use their claw swipe attack to actually block incoming strikes.
Wow, that's neat. And let me tell you, Jasper, since we've had Jasper now, we used to have a problem with bugs and spiders getting into the house. Very rarely do we see bugs or spiders in the house. If they're there, he gets them right away. That's his predator instinct. He's on it. And you're talking flies and stuff that are fast. We'll just find a dead gnat or a dead fly all the time in the sink, back door. Like, where'd that go? He must have just saw him. Boop, gone, eliminated. He's got those reflexes. He's so fast when he needs to be. He's incredibly fast. That's so cool. So they deflect attacks with their swipes. Wow.
This is surprisingly consistent and works on a lot more attacks than you might think. Now, obviously, this is a high-skill, high-reward strategy. Missing a parry can result in serious damage, but if you get good enough at this, you can ward off attacks from just about anything, and potentially even open up opportunities for counterattacks. Put all this together, and you come to understand what a house cat build truly is. A house cat is what you get when you fuse the deadliness of a snake with the energy of a mammal.
Wow.
But why does this playstyle make for such a good partnership with human players? Compared to dogs, they seem like they'd be much less useful party members. Humans broke the game and became the top-tier build by using coordinated team strategies and tool use in order to utterly trivialize their matchup versus large mammals. Dogs easily slot right into this game plan, as they can help track and chase down large prey, and also sniff out any potential ambush predators that could disrupt and punish this strategy. When a successful kill is made, dogs and humans naturally split the reward and both benefit. Dogs are also great defensively, as they can keep watch at camp and alert party members of approaching enemies. Cats are generally pretty useless in this regard. They don't have anywhere near the endurance required to chase down prey over long distances, can't square off head-to-head with those builds anyway, and aren't nearly as reliable for early enemy alerts. The kills the cat makes can't realistically be shared with humans either. It wasn't until humanity unlocked the agriculture ability that the player base began to notice additional vulnerabilities they didn't need to care about before. Vulnerabilities that dogs couldn't really help with. When operating off of a hunter-gatherer strategy,
I get it. So a dog is going to help you hunt. That's what dogs actually were initially trained for, to help you hunt. Go alert or stir up the bird so that you can then shoot it with your bow and arrow, right? Go catch the prey or whatever. Corral animals into a certain area. Cats won't do that, but cats will defend what you have. They'll defend your farm, defend your homestead from animals that are intrusive and would come and eat your crops and stuff like that. Okay, that is pretty neat. Now I get it.
Basically ignore all builds in the low weight class. Rats and birds were no threat to humans and also not worth the effort to take down. So it makes sense to just focus on larger quarries. However, when the focus shifts to farming and food storage, those same builds humans were ignoring before suddenly became one of their biggest threats. Having a granary raided and its food reserves destroyed could easily wipe out an entire human settlement. So figuring out proper security for these storage sites was critical. Dogs simply are not effective enough at stopping pest infestations to fill that role. They cannot climb or fit into small spaces and aren't stealthy enough to catch the trickier pests. Cats, on the other hand, are truly excellent at this task and come with other benefits as well. The main one being that they require very little upkeep. Although they are social builds, they hunt alone, so they don't require any direction or attention from
let's
their
go,
party
Skyrim.
members in order to accomplish their task. Since humans don't have any need for rat or bird carcasses, the fact that cats don't usually share their kills is actually a benefit rather than a drawback. The only thing cats really require from humans is to share in the shelters they construct. In the wilderness, cats typically use burrows, hollow stumps, or caves as their home bases. But these are vulnerable to attacks. Human settlements are significantly safer. Speaking of safety, even though cats are extremely lethal hunters, they pose very little danger to humans. This is a huge advantage over snakes, which theoretically could ally with humans to serve the same purpose, but in practice are far too dangerous to risk keeping around. The fact that cats are warm-blooded and therefore need to eat more frequently than snakes is also a benefit rather than a drawback for humans, since it means they need to stay on task and keep their guard up. So, while it is common to see players debate which build makes for the better addition to a human player's party, the correct answer is actually both. Dogs are a huge help in the large creature matchup, while cats cover your weaknesses in the small creature matchup.
There you go.
Having both in your party covers all of your weaknesses.
Oh,
and
that's so
enables human
cute.
settlements to use a hybrid playstyle of both hunting and farming. So if you're a human main trying to construct the most optimal party comp, the only real question is how you'll keep the dog and cat players from fighting each other.
Right.
Now, knowing which traits and abilities to invest in can be a difficult choice. Luckily for you, I've partnered with the game.
All right, and this is going to be his ad placement for the video. In truth, all right, I kind of get what he's saying. Dogs and cats living together, if they can coexist, actually are kind of like a perfect blend. I really wish maybe that would be something that we could do. However, what he didn't discuss is that cats actually are very personality-oriented creatures, meaning cats have distinct personality types, and certain cats will only like certain living situations. So, for example, there's, what is it? I think it's like red, green, and blue. Okay, so blue type is the cat basically just wants to be mellow and be left alone. The cat is completely independent. You don't have to really spend a lot of time with it. It's happy to just live in the same house as you, and you just give it food or whatever, but it'll take care of whatever it needs to do, like it's hunting predators like mice or whatever, bugs. You just leave it alone. My parents have a cat just like that literally lives in a room, and if they go to play with it, it doesn't want attention. It's like, nah, leave me alone. It just wants to have its own existence, okay? Then you've got the red personality type, which is, I don't even want to be with you. I don't like humans, right? Like anti-human, very anger, attacking, and stuff like that. Then you've got green, and green is basically ultra social, ultra loving, party animal kind of cat that always wants to be with everyone and wants to be the center of attention. So if you're cooking, that cat's going to be jumping up on the counter when you're trying to cook because it wants to know what you're doing. When you're sitting on the couch, it comes right over to you and wants to snuggle because it always wants to be part of that, right? So our cat Jasper is green. He is the life of the party. He always wants to be up in everything. The problem with that is those cats become incredibly jealous when there's something to share the attention. So for example, there's another cat that's a wild cat that comes through our neighborhood and sometimes is in our backyard. Jasper gets incredibly upset. He hisses. He attacks the door. He wants nothing to do with that cat. Get the hell out of here, right? He is the king of the castle, right? So if we were to get another dog, like a dog, he'd be so upset. He'd become the kind of cat that acts out, and he'd probably be pooping and peeing everywhere, viciously attacking things and destroying things he shouldn't be destroying because he's acting out because he's upset that we've ruined his situation here, you see? So that's why we can't have a dog. And I understand what he's saying. In the video, he's like, well, the perfect balance is having a dog and a cat. You're right, but that's not always possible because basically they don't always get along. So there you go. I really like that video. That was neat. It was an interesting video game-esque take on real life. It taught you things scientifically about a species, but it was fun with the memes. And it was well done. I really like that channel. TierZoo, I recommend it. Everyone should check it out if you want to see some funny animal videos. Okay, let's see what's next.
So Max, good to see you. First of all, so I wanted you to
It looks like he's interviewing him at an event. Shaq News. Okay.
get this some clarification because the news on the internet is, I think there's a miscommunication of like, you're not officially making a Marvel vs. Capcom game.
I'm definitely not. If it's a That's the last thing I want. So I'm trying to remind everybody, exclamation point, it's a mod. So what happened as a result, somebody by the name of Rin, she created an MVCI editor, like out of nowhere. Seemed like a fun project. This modder in the past has done really crazy things like put Goku into Strive, functioning, you know, which is a lot of work and a lot of hookup and a lot of stuff to make that happen. I played with it and it was shockingly like working. Like you could take Goku online against other people playing Strive if they had the mod and literally fight Strive characters and just give them hell. So as soon as I noticed that that was that person, it was like, oh, there might be a route here to actually make some changes to the core engine of the game. Because this isn't a surface level mod, we're just swapping out textures. This is engine access. So we had access to the full amount of the game. We started like re-engineering how things worked, visuals, and that's where it all started.
So, going back to that, why do you think MVCI got such a lukewarm reception at launch, like in your personal opinion?
Several very good reasons. MVCI, while it is a really fun game, probably one of my favorite Marvel vs. Capcom games to play, the visual style of the game was almost like in a negative, like not even in a positive light, it just did nothing but bad things for it. They were going after a cinematic Marvel universe look, and it just didn't look good on any of the Capcom characters, barely looked good on any of the Marvel characters. Not to mention the game's roster was severely lacking. This was the period of Marvel where they had not acquired Fox, so they have no X-Men characters. At the time, Marvel was like literally actively pushing away X-Men from everything. This game was made with that in mind. It quite literally came out at the worst time possible, like right before I think Infinity War came out, so nobody cared about it. You know, long story short, and it ended up selling okay. But there was so much ire. And as someone that's like, my main bread and butter is Marvel vs. Capcom. It's my favorite thing ever. It was one of the most painful experiences as a content creator to be like, I like this part of the game a lot. I love this franchise, but I can't not pay attention to these absolute huge blemishes. And, you know, it was obvious. It was like, it felt like they're trying to milk the audience in some way by making a subpar MVC game.
Putting Venomous DLC immediately, that kind of stuff.
Exactly, like the DLC characters were in the story mode, and then they dropped like a month later, so it was like a whole bunch of just bad news on top of bad news.
So like, what's your goal here for MVCI and beyond? Like, what's the roadmap and the ultimate goal to get this game out there and to change it?
So my personal goal, I've had this for years, is just to make Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite a cool game to people. Because a lot of people look at it the same way people saw Street Fighter V. It's just not a cool game. It's a game that ripped people off and made it.
You know what's funny? Now that I've never watched like Max's content, I've only reacted to it on this show. His setup right there is kind of very similar to what I used to do in my living room back in Connecticut. I would have a bunch of, we had a big couch set up. So a bunch of people would be sitting there on the couch. We watching, playing games together, filming the picture-in-picture. Here's the game. Here's us sitting there. I mean, I'm just thinking Rise of Nightmares right now, which I just reacted to on my Throwback channel a couple weeks ago. I had artwork and stuff all in the background, all video game related. It's funny because like his setup is kind of like my old setup that I used to do until I moved, and I basically do all solo stuff now.
A bunch of people angry, right? So it had that. This is many years have passed. It's been almost 7 years.
Right.
So as a game that I personally love coming back to, and it's incredibly fun to play, and it has some...
Oh, you can't see it? You couldn't see it because the logo was blocking? Oh, shit. Sorry about that. He'll show it again. I'll remove the logo.
In the history of the entire franchise. People will never see that because of the way it looks and the roster and all the bad news. So just to get the game into a space where it's like cool looking, which was why visuals were priority number one. And then after that, I kind of want to approach balance and things like that, adjusting characters in a way where if this game did get developer support.
See, there's a setup. So basically it's just a bunch of guys sitting there in office chairs. But for mine, I actually had a big couch and office chairs. And you could tell they're looking at the TV, a big TV in front of them. That's exactly how mine was set up. The TV was against the back wall. So you would have the film there, and then a camera pointed at us doing stuff in the room just like that. And I would have all artwork and stuff in the background. He has more than me. I mean, he has arcade cabinets and stuff back there. But I had models and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah. So basically, he's saying there's a mod. Does he have any footage of this mod? Is this the mod they're looking at? Oh, I guess this is the mod they're looking at now?
Beyond a couple of months when it came out. What would that have looked like 6 months later, a year later? What would they have done to the game? So that's what we're effectively targeting. Like, get the visuals online, and then start tackling some systems in the game that are kind of annoying to high-level players, just making adjustments on the fly and going from there.
So do you have like a plan in case Mr. Mouse gets a little antsy when you're doing this mod?
Yeah. I mean, that immediately as we started showing things off and we're getting front page IGN and all these, it's like, uh-oh. So I had a big red flag in my head. But at the same time, there has been other mods in the Marvel 3 scene that have been incredible. They've added 50 characters to Marvel 3. They've reverse engineered the game. I paid someone to figure out how to add character slots for an engine of a game that has no documentation. So they like brute forced everything in there. And if there was a game that was going to be taken offline at some point, it would have been that one. But from what I understand, if we're not selling things, there's no intent to sell. I have to remind people, this is a mod, it's not official. We're going to make it look as official as possible, but it is not going to be a thing that is for sale anywhere. There's another example I like to use. Monster Hunter Iceborne had a thing called Ice Mod that I recently played, and it rebalances the whole game. Like quality of life across the entire experience, new moves on weapons, everything. It works online with other people that have it. It's incredible. But it's like a large-scale mod for the whole game. And I think I want to do that with MVCI. I want to like have a large-scale mod. Here's all this new art, assets, moves,
See,
characters.
what's funny about this, though, is that apparently this was recorded at some event he attended, and then, like, right after this was the Nintendo Direct that announced the MVC collection. So now, basically, the tone has shifted. Now, instead of saying, okay, well, let's work on this MVCI mod, instead it's, oh, well, since this collection is coming out, let's all put our support behind the collection. And if the collection sells well, then that'll hopefully put enough faith in the Versus series again that Capcom will officially make a new one again, rather than having to worry on modding a 7-year-old game that flopped at launch. Instead, actually, make a brand new one, MVC4, I guess you would call it, or maybe just call it something new, Marvel vs. Capcom Revival or some Rebirth or something, right? I guess that would work. But yeah, I guess a lot is hinging on this new MVC collection that's coming out sometime this year. We don't know when. That if it does well, then hopefully Capcom will have faith in making another Versus game again. Because honestly, as I've told you guys, it's sad that in the modern day, Capcom literally only has one fighting game. Back in the day, Capcom always had a ton of fighting games at once. They had the core Street Fighter series, the Street Fighter Alpha series, the Versus series. Then they had the kind of guest games like CVS and stuff like that. There was always 3 to 4 Capcom fighting games available at once. And then that all ended in the 2000s, and then it was revived with Street Fighter 4. And then you had MVC3, so you had the 2 big ones. And then since then, I guess what it is was Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Street Fighter Cross Tekken failed so huge that Capcom lost faith in actually having more than one fighting game prominent at one time again. And that sucks. I like variety. Like, I would love to be playing 2 different Capcom fighting games right now that play completely differently, instead of, well, you play Street Fighter 6 or you play nothing, right? Like, that sucks. Well, I guess I got to play Tekken, but that doesn't play anything like a Capcom fighter, People are asking, why did MVCI or Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite fail? A few reasons. Number one, right at launch, it didn't have half the characters people wanted. Some of the most popular characters in Marvel games are X-Men. It didn't have Magneto. It didn't have Sentinel. It didn't have the classic characters people wanted because, like he said, they didn't have the Fox licensing. So Fox owned the X-Men, so they couldn't have any X-Men in it. So because of that, it's like, so half the cast that people want to play aren't in it. The visual style, they changed it. The original MVC3 visual style looked like a comic book. It had like cell shading and stuff. They removed that because they wanted to go more realistic, but the graphics just didn't look good. Like Chun-Li looks awful in that game. She looks like deformed and stuff. Like, oh God, what happened here? And then on top of that, he's right. Like a lot of it is reused content. Like they just took the characters from MVC3 and threw them in there with a few tweaks, and they're almost exactly the same. And then they had a few new characters, Rocket Raccoon and She-Hulk and stuff. Well, not She-Hulk. She was from MVC3. No, it was Rocket Raccoon and Gamora, right? But even then, it wasn't enough to feel like a genuine new game. It kind of felt like release half the content that was in MVC3, throw in a couple new characters, sell it as a brand new game. And also, yeah, DLC is always an issue. They already had tons of issue with Street Fighter Cross Tekken DLC. Then they released MVCI. Oh, we already know who the Season 1 characters are, and they're coming out within like a month of the game coming out. Like, wait, what? They're already in the game, and you're doing this again. They did it with Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Everyone hated that, and they're doing it again for MVCI. Like, what are they thinking? For me, personally, I didn't like the game at all, even though I was ranked #1 in it for like a couple days, I played it so much I was ranked #1 on consoles. I know that sounds stupid because, you know, I'm not really that good, but yeah, I was the top ranked player on consoles. I didn't like the game. It felt much like Marvel 3. The entire point of the game is you get one hit, you get a giant combo, you do one quick mix up when the next character comes in, giant combo, game's over. And I don't like that. I don't like a game where it feels like there's a touch of death. You touch them once, you basically won the game. That was the whole game. Like, there was really nothing to it. It was a very simple game. And I like a game that has more complexity to it. And the game was very kind of one track style of game. I don't like it. So that was why I didn't like it. But anyway. All right. Well, that is it for part 1 of DSP versus the internet. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in part 2 as we continue on with the Ultra member submissions.